Hello and welcome to The Top Story, a podcast with the headlines of the day from our correspondents around the world. I'm Do Hongyu. Coming up in this edition, Israel says it'll let limited amounts of food into Gaza after the military announced extensive ground operations in the territory. Bucharest Mayor Nicusor Dan has won the presidential election in Romania. And New York City Mayor Eric Adams says there's no significant damage to the Brooklyn Bridge after a Mexican Navy ship collided with it. We start in the Middle East. Israel says it'll let limited amounts of food into Gaza after the military announced extensive ground operations in the northern and southern parts of the territory. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's office said Israel will allow a basic amount of food to ensure a hunger crisis does not develop. There was no progress in ceasefire talks between Israel and Hamas. The Israeli military suggested it could scale down operations to help reach a deal. Jonathan Regev has more.
The army stating that the expanded operation has begun and that ground forces are now advancing into Gaza, both from the north and from the south. This is after quite a build-up for the past 2 weeks or so. Tens of thousands of reservists being called to service, going through some training period. Israel was said that it will wait until the end of the visit of President Donald Trump to the region. He left on Friday afternoon, and roughly 48 hours later, this operation is beginning. The operation is going on, but Israel did signal that it can stop or at least pause the operation at any time if there's any breakthrough in the negotiations which are happening in Qatar. Israel said it loud and clear: negotiations will happen under fire. It's not as if fighting will stop while negotiations are going on. And the Israeli forces, we've also heard from Gaza, going deeper and deeper into the strip. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu added that the negotiations for the moment are based only on the Witkoff plan, the plan calling for the release of 10 Israeli hostages, which will bring some weeks of ceasefire. This is as opposed to what Hamas is saying. Hamas wants an agreement which will free all of the hostages together, but will also bring an end to the war. That is something that Israel is not doing. Other than the Prime Minister, the First Minister to leak things outside is the Minister of National Security, Itamar Ben-Gvir, who said there will not be any such an agreement, no such thing as an agreement which will not bring Hamas down altogether.
That was Jonathan Regev on Israel's new plan in Gaza. In Europe, Bucharest Mayor Nicusor Dan has promised to lead the change in Romania after the independent candidate won the presidential election. Results from the electoral authority show that Dan secured more than 54% of the vote, ahead of Georgia Simeon's nearly 46%. Pro-EU Dan promised to strengthen rule of law reforms, maintain support for Ukraine, and deepen ties with the West. Simeon, who leads the Alliance for the Union of Romania's party, led the first round of the election 2 weeks ago. The election took place after the annulment of last year's results over alleged foreign interference. Pablo Gutierrez reports from Bucharest.
The turnout has exceeded what many analysts were predicting. Over 11.6 million Romanians went to the polls. Now, this is the second largest turnout since 2014. And what's striking is who's showing up. It's young voters, first-time voters, and also an unusually high number of Romanians living abroad. Many describe this as a vote that they simply could not sit out. Now, the two candidates could hardly be more different. Nicusor Dan is an independent centrist known for his anti-corruption work and for staying outside the traditional party system here in Romania. He promises to keep Romania firmly anchored in the European Union. His opponent, George Simeon, leads the far-right party AUR, and he is a populist who has challenged EU policies and drawn support from nationalist voters, including those that back Calin Georgescu. He is the ultra-nationalist that was disqualified last year. That disqualification ultimately led to the annulment of the 2024 election. So the vote is being watched closely. Many see it not just as a choice between two men, but as a test of Romania's democracy. The presidency isn't just ceremonial. The winner will command the military, appoint prime minister, and represent Romania on the world stage. So for many voters, this is about reclaiming trust in the system and deciding what kind of future Romania should have.
That was Pablo Gutierrez on what the election results mean for Romanians. Turning to North America, New York City Mayor Eric Adams says there's no significant damage to the Brooklyn Bridge after a Mexican Navy ship collided with it. 2 crew members died as the mast snapped, leaving some sailors dangling in the air. Early signs point to mechanical issues for the incident during the ship's Global Goodwill tour. Jim Spellman has more.
The Mexican Navy ship, covered in glowing lights, appears to be out of control as it collides with the Brooklyn Bridge in New York City at sunset on Saturday. The tops of its masts were shorn off before the vessel collides with the embankment. Nick Corso witnessed the collision.
And you could see there was a lot of pandemonium on the boat. I didn't realize until after, but there was people on the masts of the boat, up there. So one of theirs got hit and they fell off of it and they were hanging on the rope because they were all attached to it.
In addition to the fatalities, the Mexican Navy says at least 22 other crew members were injured.
The Mexican Ministry of the Navy will search for every family of every one of the injured in order to give them a very detailed panorama of what's going on with every one of them.
The ship, known as the Cuauhtémoc, had a crew of 277 and was in New York on a goodwill mission, leaving port en route to Iceland. But instead of heading south toward open waters, the ship traveled north and was apparently going backwards, stern first, as it collided with the bridge. No one on shore was injured, and officials say the bridge was not significantly damaged. The cause of the crash is not immediately known, but investigators suspect a mechanical issue may be behind the accident.
The pilot, the captain that was maneuvering the ship, lost, power of the ship and the current. Mechanical function caused the ship to go right into the pillar of the bridge, hitting the mast of the ship where there was a couple of sailors on top of it. These sailors were injured as a result of the mast striking the bridge.
Police boats and medics responded, taking injured crew members to local hospitals. By morning, the ship was docked. The U.S. National Transportation Safety Board is now investigating the incident.
That was Jim Spellman reporting. Moving on to Africa, at least 20 people have been killed in a suicide bomb attack targeting young recruits at a military base in Mogadishu. Medical staff at a military hospital in the capital have been treating the injured. Mohammed Kahir has more from Somalia.
Sources have confirmed that at least 20 people were killed, including 15 recruits and 5 civilians, following a suicide attack outside a military recruitment base in Mogadishu. Armed group Al-Shabaab claimed the responsibility for this particular attack, saying it killed more than 30 recruits and wounded about 80 others. That claim cannot be independently verified. Dozens of the new recruits who were wounded in the attack were admitted at Somali Military Hospital in Mogadishu. A statement from the country's information ministry confirmed the attack, but did not disclose the exact number of casualties. Authorities have urged the public to remain calm and rely only on official government channels for accurate updates to avoid misinformation. Armed group Al-Shabaab has intensified its attacks on government targets in recent months, following Somali army operations that pushed the group from various areas. This latest attack comes as Somali government, together with its partners, are seeking funding for the new African Union peacekeeping mission operating in the country.
That was Mohammed Kahir in Mogadishu. Finally, in Asia, Chinese authorities say the economy managed to withstand pressure and maintain steady growth in April. Retail sales expanded 5.1%. Value-added industrial output grew 6.1%. The National Bureau of Statistics said employment remained stable and new growth drivers gathered momentum. Wang Suwen breaks down the economic figures.
China's economy maintained a stable growth despite of the ongoing pressure in April, and the index of service production has increased by 6%, and the total retail sales of consumer goods has increased by 5.1% year-on-year, and reflecting the steady recovery of domestic demand. Well, the CPI edged down 0.1% year-on-year, but rose 0.1% month-on-month, reflecting the price stability of the Chinese market. And there are a few things that have been highlighted. One is that tourism and the travel sectors on the rise. From January to April, they have showed the double-digit increase on tourism, transport, and communication sector. And the online retail has continued to thrive, especially during the May Day holiday. The number of tourists has increased by 24%. And another thing they mentioned is that China's resilient foreign trade, and the China's trade number with Belt and Road Initiative countries has increased by 3.9%. And a lot of reporters has asked about the recent China-U.S. trade tariff talk in Geneva, and the spokesperson said that lowering the China-U.S. trade tariffs will boost the bilateral trade and help with the global economic recovery. Well, the spokesperson said China's economy is more like an ocean, not a pound, and they will do their best to release the full potential of the Chinese market, especially in the long term. So looking ahead, they will expand the high standard, opening up and stabilizing employment, advance the high quality development, also develop the full potential of the Chinese domestic market.
That was Wang Siwen on the performance of the Chinese economy in April. Malaysians have said goodbye to a pair of giant pandas that returned to China after an 11-year stay. They will spend at least a month in quarantine at a protection and research base in southwest China. The two countries have a plan to begin a new conservation project within the year. Ryan Meltzer spoke with some panda enthusiasts in Malaysia.
Fuwa and Fengyi were the first ever pandas in Malaysia, sent to celebrate 40 years of diplomatic ties with China. For the past 11 years, they lived in this purpose-built, air-conditioned enclosure and drew adoring crowds right till the final day.
Normally, each month I come 3 or 4 times just to see the pandas. If you ask me about my feelings, of course I'm sad they're leaving. So sad. But we promised to send them back, so we need to let them go.
Of course, very sad and feeling not to let them go back, but I have to, okay? Because Sichuan is their motherland.
For the past couple of weeks, the pandas have been in quarantine to prepare them for their departure. So the public have only been able to see them from inside this glass-enclosed viewing area.
Little over a year after their arrival, Fengyi and Fuwa produced a healthy cub, the fastest natural conception in captivity outside of China, followed by a second cub in 2018 and third in 2021. They've all been sent to China. On Sunday, Fengyi and Fuwa left the National Zoo, boarding a plane back to China's Sichuan province. China has pledged to send a new adult panda pair to Malaysia in the coming months.
I'm very excited to wait for the new pairs to come. No matter which pandas, as long as they're pandas, I will still love them. Come and see them very often.
Of course I'm excited. When the new pandas come, I'll just feel the same way about them. I'll love them like I love Fuwa and Fengyi.
And Malaysians will hope that the new pair will also delight them by producing cubs like Fuwa and Fengyi so successfully did.
That was Ryan Meltzer on Malaysia's giant panda cooperation with China. Before we go, here's a recap of today's top stories. Israel says it'll let limited amounts of food into Gaza after the military announced extensive ground operations in the territory. Bucharest Mayor Nicusor Dan has won the presidential election in Romania. And New York City Mayor Eric Adams says there's no significant damage to the Brooklyn Bridge after a Mexican Navy ship collided with it. And that's it for this edition of The Top Story, a podcast that brings you world headlines every weekday. For more news in politics, business, sports, and culture, you can subscribe to The Beijing Hour, a 1-hour podcast news magazine program. We welcome and appreciate all ratings and reviews. I'm Do Hongyu. Thank you for listening.